Okay, welcome to Faith and Calm. This is class 167. We are moving along in Av, and Shabbos Mevorchim Elul is this week. So, before you know it, it's like, I think it's 40 days till Rosh Hashanah. And in Boston, they already did a Tikkun Klali, which is a special prayer already, starting to get ready for the mood for Rosh Hashanah. My goodness, that's scary. Hey, just saying it. Just
Rosh Hashanah was 6 weeks from.
Is that when it said prior to Rosh Hashanah?
I didn't realize that beginning.
6 weeks from the last shop, from this past Saturday, this past Shabbos, 6 weeks from then. So it's less than 6 weeks.
Oh, wow.
So it's a custom to say Tikkun HaKlali?
Something called Tikkun. Well, at the Boston, they do it. That's not our custom, but they mentioned that they did it today. So it means, yeah.
We wish everybody Kasiva V'Chasima Tova starting from last week.
Wow. Really? Okay. Good to know. Starting to Tubav. Okay. But I'm not yet there. I'm still in the summer. And we're going to talk about something different today. Well, something from the last week's Parsha, from Re'eh. And it's going to start out a little bit technical, maybe, but I think it's very practical and very simple. Hopefully, I'll make it clear and easy to understand and practical and applicable to people's lives. That is the theme of these classes, is to try and bring the concepts to be able to see godliness and to feel godliness and to feel the closeness to Hashem and in this world, and to see it through a different pair of eyes than how a lot of other people are looking at it, because we need to do that. Otherwise it's depressing. So it's not going to be, we know it won't be anything depressing. Kind of know that kind of knows, a lot of people want to make you feel depressed. Let's not go that direction. So faith and calm. Faith and calm is our theme. So in the Parsha, these are packed. Everything, parsha? Every Parsha. This is Parsha Re'eh, but everyone from Devarim to Veschanan to Akev to Re'eh. Re'eh has some great ideas in it. And one of the points that it mentions in Re'eh is, is it Re'eh or is it Akev? We're coming week is Re'eh, right?
We're in Re'eh now.
We're in Re'eh now. So this was Akev.
Akev was last week.
Akev was last week. So this is still from Akev. I'm still hangover. This is from Akev. It talks about the Moshe does a recap of some things that happened during the course of the 40 years. He's doing a recap for all the Jewish people at this point in time. And he mentions the fact about the breaking of the Luchos, that he had to smash the two tablets. By the way, we may as well tell the joke that goes along with that story. You probably heard it before. There was once this grandfather. He asked his little grandson, or it was the father that asked the son, what did you learn in school today? And in Hebrew school, and he says, I don't know, he said some things. His father says, can I ask you a question? He says, yeah. So who broke the Luchos? Who broke the tablets? And the little boy goes, wasn't me. The father's upset. Goes to the school and says, Mr. Cohen, what kind of a teacher are you? What kind are you teaching him here? I asked my boy the simplest question, who broke the Luchos? And he tells me it wasn't me. And so Mr. Cohen says, I understand that you're upset. And but I'll tell you, I've had your kid in school for a couple of months now. He's a very good boy, and if he tells you that he didn't break the Luchos, then he didn't do it. And so now the father's really upset. He goes to Mr. Schwartz, the principal, and he says, what kind of a school have you got here? I go and I ask about his, I asked my son, what's he, who broke the Luchos? And he says, it wasn't me. I go to the teacher and he says, he's a good boy. He wouldn't do it. And he says, what kind of a school? What are you teaching here? And the principal says, I understand. The parents are upset, and so it's a disturbing thing that somebody broke the Luchos. He says, listen, we at the school, we promise you that we will reimburse you for every penny that the Luchos cost. Just give us the bill and we'll take care of it. So it's a little joke, not such a joke, because some schools they're not clueless in what they're teaching. So
I know that's what I was thinking. That
unfortunately, that's yeah, I know. In Phoenix, my nieces and nephews went to a school and they were making comparisons between the Wizard of Oz and Purim, and there's no connection. There's no connection. They didn't play, and I said, "This is disturbing beyond belief. It's disturbing even to my mother."
Like Talmud Torah.
Yeah, what are they learning? What they're not, and that's why it's a little empty, because they really don't know what to do and what they're comparing to what. So anyway, so Moshe broke the luchos, and immediately after that, it talks about the death of Aaron. And the commentators want to know what the connection is between the two things, because if one thing comes right after the other, your ears should pick up, your eyes should get interested, and you should ask a question: why is one thing connected to the other? So one of the commentators, I think Rashi, explains it, and it says, because it's difficult for God. It's difficult. The passing of a tzaddik is as difficult to him as the breaking of the luchos. Okay. That's interesting. You're making a comparison. Why is there a comparison? I mean, there's other things that you can compare one thing to the other that's difficult, It doesn't, there's other things in Jewish history that are, comparable. There must be some linkage, some connection between these two ideas. Breaking the luchos seems to be one thing, and then you start to ask real questions. Let's go to the basics. Moshe broke the luchos, right? Why did he break the luchos? What did it accomplish to break the luchos? Remember, these are precious items. These were tablets that were given to him by God, and they weren't his to break. I'm sorry, the commentaries even asked that.
And it took a very long time to make them.
He didn't own them. It wasn't his. He was on a mission. He was supposed to give from God to the Jewish people. He's not yours to break.
I was just adding that it's not like he just went and bought them. It's like it took a long time to,
especially since right. That these were written by God. They're irreplaceable. They're precious. You can put $1 on this. It's literally the works of Hashem. If you know the Medrash, it says that these were created at the 6 days of creation. These are one of the 10 things that were created during the 6 days of creation. So it's, so this is like, these are precious, and they were made out of sapphire, and it was the handwriting of Hashem. It's the price you can't even put on it, and so forth. And he broke it. And what does it accomplish to break it, and so forth? Let's to use an analogy that I heard from Rabbi YY, a little bit absurd, but it gets the point across. You like it or you don't. He says, imagine, it's your 50th wedding anniversary. You buy your husband a very, very special gift. You spend a lot of time trying to get it. And when he comes home from work, he's out of sorts. He's misbehaving. He's in a grumpy mood. And you're not giving him a gift that day. So what do? You smash it, you throw it in the fireplace, you destroy it. Or maybe you say, I'll keep it for some later time, and then I'll give it to him. I'm not giving it to him now. Or you take it back to the store, but you don't destroy it. So why didn't Moshe just say, the Jews are not ready to receive the 10 commandments? God, I'm giving them back to you. Give it back to them later. That would have been, it might have made sense. What's with this smashing the luchos? There are commentaries that say, well, they became so heavy, he didn't deliberately do it like out of anger, but they got just so when the letters went off, they lost their ability to be liftable anymore. That was the light, the illumination, and they became so just heavy rocks, and so they fell down. That's an explanation, a historical explanation, but we need to more understand this more. And then the last question is, we know that the Jews actually, when they got the second tablets, they kept the first ones. They had a special Aaron, that they had a special ark, and they kept in one ark the whole luchos, and the other one they had the broken ones. And the broken ones they would take out to war with them whenever they went out to war in that Aaron. And that is hard to understand too, because if you want to bring them out to you as some sort of a sign of merit when you're going to war, don't bring the broken ones, bring the whole ones. The broken ones are just a reminder, the fact that the Jews sinned with the eagle. You're bringing a message that's not a good message about the Jews at that time. It says you're not supposed to. The Kohen Gadol is not supposed to wear gold on Yom Kippur because it reminds you of the calf, and he doesn't wear gold, and we don't wear gold on Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, and so forth like that. We dress simply and so forth because it reminds you of the Egel. But this is actually literally the breaking of the luchos is the actual thing. So we have a problem. So we have three problems here. We have one of the problems is what is the connection between the broken luchos and Aaron's death. The second one is why did Moshe break the luchos? Wasn't me. What did he break? What he was allowed to? Was he legally allowed? Was it his to break in the first place? And the last one is why are you carrying around this broken luchos? The answer is interesting. The answer to this, I think it's from the Rebbe. I have to get the sources again. But the answer is an interesting one. And the explanation goes as follows, but we'll make it more easy to understand and direct. So I heard this from Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson. He said one time he was doing marriage counseling, and a couple came in, not married, fairly recently, and the wife had a complaint about the husband. Good one, actually, very good one. And that is that since they got married, they live in New York, and every evening he's busy. Not, like work. He's busy with simchas. He has to go to a bris, well, not a bris, but he has to go to a vach night. He has to go to a wedding. He has to go to a bar mitzvah. He has to go to somebody's house as shiva. I mean, he was a very social guy, had a lot of friends. They all expected him to be coming to to be engaged. And so he says, I have to go to all these different things. And she's complaining, and she feels, that she's lonely and that she's afraid, and she's alone at home, and that she's scared, and she wants her husband home at night. And that was the discussion between the two of them. He wants to go. He feels he has to go. It's a social responsibility. And she wants him home at night. So Rabbi Y.Y. is listening to these two arguments, and the husband turns to the wife and says, here, let me ask you a question. He says, how old were you when you got married? She says a number, like 23, whatever it was. And he says, listen, the husband is saying to the wife, he says, listen, how was it before we got married? She says, well, did you live alone? She says, well, I lived with my parents, but afterwards I lived by myself. I was in I had an apartment. He says, okay, fine. Then here's the solution. All you have to do is imagine like your life was before you got married. Before you got married, you weren't afraid. So now just imagine that. You weren't afraid before, so why should you now be married there? Yeah, Suri's shaking your head saying, the guy is clueless, right? He's got this all mathematically worked out in his head, It sounds very reasonable. Just imagine yourself like you were, not, and that's all your problems. So my wife says, they're going to have to explain to you a little bit of something about marriage. And this is, I think, the idea, and this is an important idea. There are things that you do in life that after you do it, you're not the same person anymore. After it occurs, you're different. You're married now. You can't go pretend you're not married anymore. You've become a new person. It's become part of who you are. There was a philosopher of the Revolutionary War. His name was Thomas Paine. And he said the following great line. He said, a mind once enlightened can never become dark. Once you see the light, once you understand something, you can't go back and pretend it's just like it never happened anymore. that people would say, listen, you have a lot of anxiety and you have a lot of worries and so forth like that. Why don't you just pretend like you're a horse? You've got the food in front of you. You've got a place to stay. You have nice animal bliss, and so forth. There's no reason for you to cry and to worry about, these things and so forth. Just be like, like an animal, and just live day to day like a forager and just live on whatever you're dealing and so forth. And the answer is I can't. I'm a human being now. My mind is enlightened. I've seen it. I've seen something different. I can't go back and just live that way. I'm a different person now because I've listened. I've gotten to a higher place. So the mathematical equation doesn't work. You can't just pretend like, you can go back to a situation before. Certain things happen. And when you get to that place, you can't go just live on a simpler level. It doesn't work that way. Leonard Bernstein said that a life without music is not a life that is not worth living. So if you would give Leonard Bernstein $1 million and say, Leonard, just never listen to music again. You're comfortable, you got a house, you got money, and you would go, it's not worth living. Music is not part of me. I am music. I am a musician, and I can't live without music anymore. So there are things in life that change you permanently. That's the same thing with the Jewish people. When the Jewish people saw infinity at Har Sinai, they became a people who live on a different plane, on a different level, on a different being and so forth. They can't just be like non-Jews anymore. We're driven. And you might say that angst and that drive and that ability to change the world just makes us crazy. Well, maybe, yeah, but it's a good kind of crazy. In other words, we can't go back to just living on the level of I'm on my vacation on my yacht and I'm having a great time and, and everything is wonderful. And there's a restlessness in the Jewish soul that feels that it has a mission that it has to accomplish. And therefore, it cannot be comfortable just living on a simple, physical level, shopping and cleaning and taking your vacation and just taking life on a purely materialistic level. We're sensitive people, and our souls have seen something. The Jewish people have seen something bigger, and therefore we cannot just go back to the previous.
Also, can I ask you? Also, they heard Hashem's voice for the first two.
That's right. And so it affected us permanently.
When you said they've seen it, they heard Hashem.
If the experience affected us permanently and made us different people, just like that a mind once seen, the one sees infinity, one sees enlightened, cannot go back to the ones before. So that is actually what Moshe was saying with the luchos. You can't go back to just having nice, pretty sapphire stones with no writing on them anymore. Godliness was there, and godliness. I can't just, now that I've touched that, nothing compares anymore. It's just empty, heavy rock without that. The same thing with the soul and the body. When the soul is together with the body, it's a different thing. And so when the soul departs, the body decomposes immediately. Interestingly enough, that's the same thing with couples you have, C2. When one person in the couple dies, sometimes the love is so deep that the other one dies within a few months because they can't be apart anymore. They've become one unit. They become one thing. So Barbara Bush passed away, and George Bush passed away a month or two later because they had a great relationship, and that was because of the depth of the relationship. So we see the connection between Aaron's death and the luchos. When Aaron died, it was like the light, the auras, the letters departed from the body, and there was a missing thing. When the luchos were broken, it was like the letters departed from the luchos. And this is also why the Jews take the luchos out into battle, because they're basically saying to Hashem, you know what? This is the real message of who a Jew is. Not that everything is great and so forth, but we can't live without this. We can't live on a broken level. There's a beautiness in brokenness. There's a beauty in brokenness, and that we understand that, you know what? It's symbolic of the fact that we cannot be whole without this infinite level. Without it, we will be broken. We'll be shattered. We will be shards. And that's the message that they were trying to bring out, and that's the message that the Jews are bringing out. that, you know what, if we don't have this, now there's a certain beauty in sometimes in broken things, right? There's this kind of Japanese art where they break ceramics and glass and stuff like that, and they re-glue it together with gold filling or something like that. It looks very pretty. It's Fuzitsu or something like that. That's the name of it. So people appreciate, sometimes brokenness can actually be a very pretty thing because it means that you're on a very high level. It means that you're sensitive to something bigger and that you can't just live on a very, very superficial level, that you actually are a deeper person and a higher level. And that's what the Jews were saying is, we're in on this, and so forth. And we're not whole until we finally bring Mashiach and finally finish the job of the world. So that's part of the Jewish people. We're not happy and we're not content until we actually this mess, the final for every people and for the whole world, that transformation occurs. So we can't just be comfortable and at our home and taking care of ourselves and happy with the summer and whatever. We can at a certain level, but on a deeper level, we're not comfortable. And this is part of the voice, but that's actually a good voice. It's a voice that says, you know what, you're in tune with the mission. You're in tune with a big mission with God, and therefore don't be upset about yourself in that way. It's actually a sign of health. And with that, I will turn over the microphone to.
Where did you put my picture?
I put your picture right here.
Okay.
Is that big enough for you?
Where?
This
Where's
is
it going to be on? Oh, it's right on the desktop.
It's right here on the
Okay,
desktop.
fine.
Okay,
Okay,
right
good.
like
Thank you.
that. Okay.
Okay, fine. Okay,
Good
thank
enough?
you.
Okay. And
Okay,
yep.
good, thank you.
Okay, good. And good. I said we wouldn't go too long. So
Okay, good, thank you. Thank you very
I
much.
did want to ask something,
I
but
never heard it so much.
Yeah.
Yes, Sarah, you want to add something? Go ahead.
no, ask
Okay, oh,
what when he was saying when he broke the luchos that he didn't have the same thing anymore, and I was thinking, what was it that he didn't have that he wasn't
stones without the writing the stones without the writing are not what we want.
right, but how are they not? When were they not without the writing? That's not really so clear.
Because the writing flew up to heaven before he broke them. The letters flew up to heaven. The letters flew back to heaven.
No, I heard, but I'm trying to remember if he said that. I don't.
He did say that. Yeah.
Right. So I guess I was just trying to understand the connection. Like, what does that have to do with him and his connection to Hashem? Like forget it.
No, it's
The whole thing is just like, it's just
I
like
have the
abstract.
answer that could I answer that
yes,
one?
please,
Or
Molly. Please, yes.
I would attempt to answer it. I think this is one of two situations in the Torah where there's an exchange going on between Hashem and one is Abraham and then there's one with Moshe, where something happens, and like with Abraham's, God, Hashem is going to visit him on the third day of the circumcision, and then the three strangers come to his tent, and he excuses himself from speaking to Hashem, and he greets the strangers and shows them hospitality. So we learn from that it was so important that even God approved of him leaving the conversation to go and do something for other people that he should be doing. So with the luchos, I think it's a similar kind of a thing. It was God understood why he did it, and it teaches that we have second chances. And that God was merciful and gave everyone a second chance as well, and gave Moshe a second chance. So I think these are two situations where there are interactions with Hashem between these two people and Hashem, each individually, and each one is fixable. Not in exactly the same way. I mean, the luchos not in the same way that it was, but it.
Right. It's not like Moshe really didn't do anything wrong.
In fact, the very last Rashi in Chumash, Chumash, it's talking at the end of Chumash, it's talking about the greatness of Moshe. And Rashi says, what does this refer to? Hashem gave him a big yasher koach, a big congratulations. And what did he give them the big congratulations on? That you broke the luchos. That's Hashem congratulated him that you were the kind of leader that knew that even though this is the most precious thing that ever came to earth, it's not as precious as the relationship between Hashem and the Jewish people. And for different reasons, the luchos had to be broken in order to preserve that relationship, because the whole story that and I'm not going to go into it now because it's long, but it's like Hashem and the Jewish people were like a couple getting married, and here the Jewish people are fooling around with a golden calf.
Right.
Moshe had to break the luchos. He broke the
but your husband was talking about
his was different.
What changed between Moshe?
Yes.
And who is it?
Okay. Sorry, if you don't mind, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna ask Eskilshim to answer that for you, but I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna go on with the class if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, good. So I'm briefly going to say what we say every time, which is that we are the most important thing for us to remember is that we're in a unique era. We are in the unfolding of the redemption. We're extremely privileged to know about this. Not everybody in the world knows about this. The Rebbe told us in 1992 that the Rebbe was never wrong about any public prediction that he made. And he said that we're in the beginning of the unfolding of the redemption, and it's our job to tell everybody else. Because when the redemption is very obvious to everybody, they're going to turn to you and they're going to say, "You knew about this. Why didn't you tell me?" So the Rebbe says it's our responsibility to tell everybody else. And our souls were handpicked to be here at this time because it's our job to do this. And we were given all the tools that we need. We were given the Torah, which is our guidebook. We were given the amazing talks of the Rebbe from 1991 to 1992, which are like a guidebook to the redemption. And finally, what we're doing tonight, by talking about the redemption and learning about it, we're actively advancing the cause of the redemption. So I want to pull up a little picture, if I can remember how to share my screen. And yeah. Okay, so can you guys see this thing? Let's make it even bigger. Can you see it? Yeah, obviously.
Very big. It's very big.
Yeah. Do you know what it's a picture of?
A crow on an eagle?
Or what it is?
It's a raven or a crow. It's a raven on the back of an eagle. Now,
right, but
the eagle is the prince of the sky. The eagle is the king of the sky. There is nobody stronger, nothing in the air, no creature in the air that is stronger than the eagle. The eagle can fly 200 to 300 miles per hour when it's diving, for example, to catch its prey. And it has the broadest wingspan of any bird, and it's extraordinarily powerful. The raven is a little so the eagle is the king of the sky, and the raven is this imp. The raven is it's called the gangster of the sky. It's like a little gangster. And when the eagle is flying, the crow, the raven or the crow, both of them, whatever, the raven jumps, it flies up, it hates the eagle because one thing the eagle does, sometimes the eagle attacks its nests, and the raven is very territorial. So when the eagle is flying, the eagle cannot fight. It's flying and it cannot fight. It's amazing. Claws are underneath it, and the eagle and the raven jumps onto the eagle's back. Not where the claws are underneath the eagle. And what does the raven do? It bites the back of the neck of the eagle. It's like this, it's this gangster that's just like it flies up there and it just terrorizes the eagle. So what does the eagle do? Does anybody know?
No.
You know what the eagle does? the eagle doesn't bother to fight the raven. It doesn't get into arguments with the raven. It doesn't fight it. All the eagle does is fly higher, because when it flies higher, the air is much thinner in the upper atmosphere, and the eagle has big, big lungs, and the eagle can take in enough air, but the raven only has these little tiny normal lungs, and the raven can't take that altitude. The raven can faint up many times, faints and just falls off. So it's sort of like a muscle for life, that when you are henpecked, when you are pecked by some terrible fear, right? Like the crow that's attacking the back of your neck. What is the answer? The answer is not to fight the fear. The answer is simply fly higher. Fly higher, and the fear will go away. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to give a couple of real life examples about how we can do this in our own life. So first of all, I want to say that today is today all day long, last night and today has been the yahrzeit of the Rebbe's father. His name was Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Schneerson. He was a descendant of the Alter Rebbe, just like the Rebbe. Obviously, the Rebbe's lineage to the Alter Rebbe goes through his father, and he was an incredible gibor, an incredibly strong man. The Frierdiker Rebbe, after he was, the communists tortured him, and finally there was a lot of international pressure, and they were forced to release the Frierdiker Rebbe, and the Frierdiker Rebbe left Russia, and he left Russia, and at that point, the Rebbe's father, who was a big Rav, a big rabbi then it was called, I think it's called this again, Yekaterinoslav, and in the middle, it was called Dnepropetrovsk. Dnepropetrovsk. So anyway, we'll call it Yekaterinoslav. He was a big rabbi there, and he was the strongest rabbi that remained in Russia, and he gave strength to everybody. In the 30s, in the 1930s, the communists took over I think something like in the teens, in the late
Yeah,
teens,
like right,
1917, yeah,
yeah,
around then.
right.
So, but by the 30s, the oppression was horrible, absolutely horrible. As you know, the Jews were not allowed to do anything Jewish. Even just getting together with other Jews without anything religious was against the law. You could get in terrible trouble. You couldn't do mikveh, you couldn't do kashrus, you couldn't do bris, you couldn't do a kosher chuppah, you couldn't do any of those things. You could be sent to Siberia. And sorry, we have a mutual friend, Malka Bela, and Malka Bela, all she did was learn Hebrew. And her Hebrew teacher, not Torah teacher, simply the language, was sent off to Siberia. And years later, he was able to come back, but he was a completely different looking person. He looked very bad. So it was a very, very, very oppressive. But Rabbi Levi Yitzchak did not, he flew higher. He did not bow down to the communists. Every Shabbos afternoon at Mincha time, he would give a fiery speech telling the Jews, we must not give up on any Jewish practice. Nothing. They're ignore these people. Nothing. We must not give up on anything. And I read a sweet article by a neighbor of his named Dovber Gurarye, and he lived in Dnepropetrovsk, Yekaterinoslav. He was his next door neighbor, and he said that the entire city loved Rabbi Levi Yitzchak. He was like, it was so encouraging to them to see somebody who stood up for truth, and he didn't tell them to do anything that he himself was not doing, and he was arranging all these things in secret, brisim, chuppahs, all that stuff. He was doing it in secret for his community, and kashrus, he stood up to the Russians. They wanted him to say that a certain thing about matzah was kosher, and he said, "No, unless you let me supervise it, I'm not saying it's kosher." And they and as this guy Dovber Garorier said, there was not a mighty warrior in all of Russia that would do that. There was nobody that had that chutzpah to stand up to the Russians. And so there's a well-known story, I'll tell it, that a woman arrived at the height of the oppression in the 1930s. A woman arrived at Rabbi Levi Yitzchak's apartment and, quietly knocked on the door. And she said, "My daughter and her fiance are coming here in an hour, and they're hoping that the Rav will arrange a kosher chuppah for them. But obviously, it has to be completely secret, not only because it's against the law, but also the daughter and the fiance hold extremely high government positions, and it would be the end of their lives if this was found out." So Rabbi Levi Yitzchak didn't hesitate. Of course, we're going to do it, and he set out to find a minyan, and he could only find. I mean, it's nighttime. He could only find 8 other guys. So plus him, that's 9. They needed another person, and he couldn't find one anywhere. And so what did he do? Incredible. There was a guy who lived on the first floor. He was planted there by the communists. He was Jewish, but he was a total, there were a lot of Jews back then that had totally given themselves over to communism, totally left Judaism, and felt that Judaism was the wrong thing and communism is beautiful, the way of the future. And his entire job, the reason he was in that apartment building was to spy on Rabbi Levi Yitzchak and keep a dossier of all the Jewish things that he was doing. He was, he was specifically there in order to trap Rabbi Levi Yitzchak and get a strong case against him. So Rabbi Levi Yitzchak calls on him or calls for him, and they meet. And Rabbi Levi Yitzchak looks at him and he says, "I need you. There's a Jewish couple in my apartment. They want to get married with a kosher wedding. And we need a 10th man. And I need you. I need you to join us." And the guy was so flabbergasted because more than anybody else in the whole world, he realized what Rabbi Levi Yitzchak was risking by asking him, the spy, to be the 10th man. And he was probably also extremely honored that Rabbi Levi Yitzchak considered him a real Jew, a Jew that would count in a minyan. And he did it. And the couple got married, and it was a, and the Rebbe said, our Rebbe said about his father, "From my father I learned not to be afraid." Now Rabbi Levi Yitzchak didn't go through this unscathed. He was arrested in I think something like 1939, and he only and he was pretty much in prison for almost the rest of his, the next 6 years. I think he died in 45, 44, 45, around then. And he went through heck and high water after they arrested him, to the extent that somebody gave the Rebbe a picture. Later, many years later, Russia released all the documents, all the things that had happened to Rabbi Levi Yitzchak when they were in his control. They not a pretty picture. But anyway, they had a picture of him, and the Rebbe could not recognize that this was his father. The Rebbe said, This is my father of blessed memory." He even wrote on the back of the photo, "My father of blessed memory?" ? He couldn't even recognize him physically. Now, so his lack of fear didn't come without a price, but he still did it because it was worth it to him not to live with fear and to do the right thing. And I don't know between you and me, I don't know Hashem's accounting on all this, but Rabbi Levi Yitzchak went through a lot. But who is he? he's the father of Mashiach. It's not an easy thing to be the father of Mashiach. He's the father of Mashiach. So anyway, I'm going to tell you another way. So that's one way. One way of flying higher than fear is simply not recognizing it, not bowing down to it, like Rabbi Levi had said. But there are other methods for the rest of us that are not quite on that level. So, anyway, this is I was I was very afraid of something recently. I'm not usually very afraid of things, and something hit my funny bone. And I was, I had insomnia, I was afraid, and I didn't like it. And I started reading something, and I remembered, there is a total other way to overcome fear. So forgive me, this is so different from Rabbi Levi Yitzchak's story. But there was once a musical many, many years ago called The King and I. And I barely remember it. I barely remember it. There was some kind of English school teacher who was hired to go to Siam, something like that, and be a teacher for the king's children. And she was very afraid. And she didn't, she was very afraid. It's a different country, a different everything. And so in this, so what does she do? What does she do? And so what does she do? She has her fear, but she starts singing, and she sings silly, happy tunes. And as soon as I read that, I thought, "Whoa, that's what I have to do!" And I started singing a silly, happy tune. I won't sing because we're being because who knows who watches YouTube, but it was magical, absolutely magical, because even before when the fear first started, I was aware that Shalom Sihudis, this might not be the end of the story. This might just be, this might be the beginning of the story. This might be, there might be many more things that unfold after this, and it might end well. It might end well. It was like a very, very, when the fear was sitting heavily on me, it was a very faint voice. But after I started singing and dancing, I don't think I danced. After I started singing and dancing, and a silly, remember the song I'm singing, a happy tune. Anyway, after that, I was convinced this is only the first, this is not the end of the story. It's not going to end like this. It was an amazing thing. I just went above the fear with humor and with singing, and dancing is also extremely powerful. You can go above, you instead of attacking the fear, just go above it, fly above it. So
that's a beautiful analogy.
yeah, I like the thing about the eagle
eagle.
and the raven. Yes. So anyway, I'm going to end the class here because we try and keep shorter classes now. And I'm going to ask if there's any questions.